This is Scott Mayo again. I graduated from the University of South Alabama with a degree in English creative writing, and actually had a year of graduate school as well. I attended Auburn University in my first year, so War Eagle. Yeah. This is a Confederate memorial here in Pensacola, Florida, on Palafox Street. This has been here for many, many decades. Long time. And I feel like this is an appropriate place to read something that was actually, in large part, written by my father. Now, my father is 83 years old. He just turned 83 March 4th. So a couple days ago. Now he is, his father was the grandson of, well, you know, it's Mayo. my great great grandpa Mark Mayo, my great grandfather Francis Marion McCurdy, and my great uncle Frederick Mayo were all Confederate veterans. And so my father is directly descendant of them. He's a descendant of Confederate veterans even more closely than I am, of course. He's also a Korean War veteran. And see, this really means a lot to him. You know, he really cares about the United States of America. That's his country. And he's proud to have served in the Korean War for the United States. See, that's what this is about. It's not a secession from the Union or anything like that. It's about the United States, the future of the United States. And I wrote this in my blog using, but this gives, using actually a draft that he had written. He had allowed me to use it. And this gives really some detail. You know, this was a war. We can talk about ideals and all this kind of stuff, but this was a war. And this is really just an account of how serious this really was. The following is an excerpt from a draft of a family history written by my father, Louis Mayo. Back to great-grandpa Mark Mayo. I've enclosed some information about his war years, the history of Grandpa Mark's unit, Company E, the roster of the men, and a brief summary of their engagements. In November of 1864, Company E had some men captured at Pine Barren, Florida, about 25 miles north of Pensacola, and they were held as prisoners of war until the war ended. Most of the 15th Cavalry Regiment's engagements were in Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, but as stated in the record, Company E was detached for special assignments for months at a time throughout the war as cavalry support for other outfits or for scouting enemy units. Enclosed is a newspaper article from the Mobile paper about the Battle of Ilisca, Alabama, which was the last battle Grandpa Mark was in. On his pension form, he told about his last battle around Claiborne, Alabama, which took place at the community of Ilisca. As the information I've enclosed states, about 400 regular Confederate cavalry troops of the 15th Cavalry Regiment were sent to Ilisca to help the local militia and some local people repel what was thought to be not too large a force of Union troops heading their way. Grandpa Mark's and Uncle Frederick's Company E was one of the companies that went. They ran into from 4,000 to 6,500 of some of the best equipped troops in the Union Army under General Steele, who were commanded in the field by General Lucas. The Confederate troops were completely defeated. The local people up there call it Lucas's Raid. A few days later, General Robert E. Lee surrendered to General U.S. Grant at Appomattox, which effectively ended the Civil War. Grandpa Mark and his brother were barely able to get away from Miliska alive. After the South surrendered, Grandpa Mark took the oath of allegiance to the United States of America at Milton, Florida, as was required of all Confederate veterans. I don't know where his brother, Frederick, and the McCurdy brothers took their oath. Maybe the same place. I might mention that after Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox, just a couple hours later, there was one more great battle raging farther south, which would be the last major engagement of the Civil War. It was at Blakely, Alabama, a town across the river from Mobile, where Confederate troops were guarding the eastern approach to Mobile. 16,000 Union troops completely overwhelmed the Confederate troops at Blakely. The Confederate troops at Blakely were made up of regulars and many old men and young boys. Many of the Confederate troops drowned while trying to swim in the river to escape the overwhelming force of Union troops. After the Civil War, Grandpa Mark drove a stagecoach for a while. In 1880, Grandpa Mark and Aunt Mercy Jane's husband, my great-great-uncle Francis Marion McCurdy, went into the timber business together in Escambia County, Florida. Great-grandpa Mark had married Margaret Angeline Jernigan in 1867. Great-grandma Angeline was born in Santa Rosa County in 1843. And this is where I take over from here. These are my words here. What did the Confederate flag mean to Confederate troops? Same things. Same things the Union flag meant to Union troops. Home, security, and survival. My great-great-grandfather, Mark Mayo, my great-great-grandfather, Francis Marion McCurdy, and my great-great-great-uncle, Frederick Mayo, were Confederate soldiers in the war between the Confederate States of America and the United States of America. Like most Confederate soldiers, these three young men were not a part of the slave-owning aristocracy that had supported secession from the United States. Their families had no say in that. And like most Confederate soldiers, these three young men did not fight in the interest of slavery or even for the cause of states' rights. They simply fought to protect their homes and families from an overwhelmingly powerful invading army. This monument, excuse me, very shortly after Mayor Ashton Hayward, with no prompt from anyone apparently, and without asking the people of Pensacola, Florida, what they wanted at all, just simply decided to remove the first Confederate flag from the Five Flags displays, historical displays, purely historical, of Pensacola's history, heritage, and culture. And the Escambia County Commission seconded Mayor Hayward's decision, replacing the first Confederate flag, which had replaced the Confederate battle flag in 2000 for the very reason that the Confederate battle flag offended some people. People who had actually, and the only one of the ones that would have offended at all were those who had actually gone through segregation in the South, because unfortunately the Confederate battle flag was used by segregationists to represent their interests, although it never had anything to do with slavery or segregation or anything. Nevertheless, in 2000, as I've mentioned before, it was decided to replace, in these displays of the 5 flags of Pensacola's history and heritage, that of these countries, these nations under which Pensacola had existed: Spain, France, Britain, the Confederate States of America, and the United States of America. It was decided to replace arguably the least offending, the flag of the flag of really arguably the least offending nation of all 5 of these, when you take into account what was done to Native Americans and African Americans. The Confederate States, it was found that the battle flag had always just been used in the battlefield. And so it wasn't an official flag of the Confederate States of America, and flown above the Confederate capital. And so they replaced the first Confederate flag, as mentioned before, to show regard for those who had actually suffered segregation and taken a misplaced but albeit understandable negative association to the Confederate battle flag, while at the same time maintaining simply that the Confederate States of America was a part of the history of Pensacola. The Escambia County Commission gave in to the demands of Diane Crummell, the Escambia County Democratic Women's Club president. She told them, quote, "I understand the flags are down, but I want to make that permanent. I don't want any chance of those flags ever going up again." This one woman, this Democrat, Escambia County Commission, mostly Republicans. As mentioned before, this is a Republican ploy, draw attention away from the issue of gun regulation, has been from the very beginning when Nikki Haley removed that flag. That's all it is, giving in to the demands of Democrats. None of these, maybe, it looked like there were only 3 black people in this group. Diane Crummell's a white woman. Almost all of them were white. It looked like maybe 2 of these black people in this group might have gone through segregation in the South. I don't know, just judging by their age. But then again, this wasn't even the battle flag. So the bottom line is, segregationists didn't use the first Confederate flag. They used the battle flag. The Ku Klux Klan didn't use the first Confederate flag, used the battle flag. Nobody had any reason to dislike the first Confederate flag at all. But immediately, very soon after that happened, somebody vandalized this monument, this memorial here. That's all this is. This is a memorial. Our Confederate dead. You know, how harmful is that? How harmful? AD 1861, AD 1865, the uncrowned heroes of the Southern Confederacy, whose joy was to suffer and die for a cause they believed to be just. Their unchallenged devotion and matchless heroism shall continue to be the wonder and inspiration of the ages. Now, of course, these were the heroes. Maybe they fought for a cause, but, you know, the majority of Confederate veterans They were just fighting to defend their homeland. This was, from the point of view of the Confederacy, this was almost an exclusively defensive war. It was the Union that was, invading the Confederate States. But the point is, this is just a memorial. This isn't advocating racism. This isn't advocating segregation. This isn't advocating anything. He's even saying to die for a cause they believe to be just. He's not saying it was a just cause. And of course, it wasn't about the war really wasn't about slavery anyway. But anyway, not long after Nikki Haley made the decision, for no other reason, there simply could be no other reason. She did nothing to prevent bastards like Dylan Roof from getting a hold of handguns again. But she goes after a flag. Had nothing to do with that. Had nothing to do with that shooting. So she removed this. The Confederate battle flag had been placed atop the South Carolina Capitol by segregationists a long time ago. Segregationist politicians. And it had been removed in 2000 for that reason. And moved to a monument nearby. Now, how harmful is that? And Nikki Haley, as mentioned before, Dylan Roof doing what he did. Gunning down 9 people in a church, a place of worship, simply because they were of a different race than his. He inflicted a wound in the black community in the United States and a wound in the Christian community in the United States. And what did Nikki Haley do to heal either of those wounds? Nothing. Nothing. She just inflicted another wound. She just inflicted another wound in the hearts of proud Southern Americans. So we have a third wound. And politicians from her, they went on doing the same thing. It's just so insane what has been accomplished. But very shortly after Nikki Haley removed that battle flag, without asking the residents of South Carolina, without even letting them vote on it, not from a Capitol building, but from a monument nearby, she could have replaced that flag with the first Confederate flag. Did that occur to her? No. South Carolina was the first state to see it was represented, the first Confederate flag. And she could have let the South Carolinians vote on it. And she could have done something about the gun laws. So that, honest to God, as mentioned before, it literally overnight, it became almost impossible to obtain a Confederate flag of any design in the United States of America. But just as easy as ever to obtain a handgun in the state of South Carolina. Because of Nikki Haley and what she did. How is this honoring the victims of that massacre? How is this honoring those people? Just to dodge Americans' attention away from the issue of gun regulation, because that's the Republican Party's baby, the NRA. Oh, don't even touch the issue of gun regulation. Don't even touch that. Don't dare offend the NRA. Don't dare offend the NRA base. Or don't dare offend our loyal NRA base, unyielding NRA, from which even my father got out after the Newtown shootings in Connecticut, where this bastard killed 20 first graders and six other adults with an assault rifle. The NRA refused to do anything to change its position on assault rifles. My father got out. My father, a lifetime member of the NRA, he asked the NRA when they called, you want to become a member of the NRA again? Do you want to renew your membership? He said, what are you going to do about these assault rifles? He said, these people don't have any business taking assault rifles at homes and all this stuff. And he said, absolutely nothing. He said, well, then forget it. He dropped out of the NRA. When my father gets out of the NRA, there's something wrong with the NRA, man. There was no way in hell this whole thing was not simply a Republican ploy to dodge the issue of gun regulation, because the Republican Party did not want to offend its NRA base. But it didn't think, the Republican Party didn't think that it might offend its loyal Southern base too. Because you know what? The majority of Southerners are Republicans. I mean, the South is the strongest Republican region. They didn't think about that, did they? No, that didn't occur to them. You see, this is how I feel about this. These politicians, it's their business. If they don't want to do anything about gun regulation at all, and these mass shootings continue, that's their business. But it's not their business to go after something that has nothing to do with it, whether it be the Confederate flag or Islam or anything else. And that's what they're doing. And that's what they will continue to do. Shortly after Nikki Haley removed that flag, a Confederate memorial in South Carolina was vandalized. You know what was written on it? Black Lives Matter. Matter was misspelled. It was M-A-T-E-R, but Black Lives Matter. It's kind of interesting, It's kind of confusing. The majority of those young people actually who swooped down, demanding that flag removed in South Carolina, you know what? They were white. They were young and they were white. They hadn't gone through civil rights, segregation or anything. I just found this out. I just found this out last night. You know where they came from? Facebook. It was just this hashtag take down the flag. Hundreds of almost exclusively white young people who had no idea, what they were protesting or anything, descended, the Confederate South Carolina Capitol building, Capitol grounds, to demand that the Confederate battle flag. No understanding what any of it was about, simply because of a Facebook, order. See, this is what's happening in America today. This digital age technology is just making these protesters who have no idea even what they're protesting. They're just mindless, and they're just reacting to everything. Hashtag this, hashtag that, hashtag take down the flag. The Vietnam era protesters, they knew what they were protesting. Everybody during the Vietnam War, everybody in this country was affected by that war in some way, personally. Knew somebody who had gotten killed over there, knew somebody who was serving over there. There were protesters against the Vietnam War. There were protesters supporting the Vietnam War. And they clashed. But I swear to God, let me tell you something. These protesters on both sides, they loved America. They had different ideas, but they both loved America, both sides. They really cared about America, and they also knew what they were protesting. What are these digital age protesters protesting today? All these white kids, you know, they say Black Lives Matter and all this kind of stuff because of a few isolated incidents of police misconduct toward black civilians, and in some cases alleged. We don't really know. They don't even know all the facts. How many of these protesters, how many of these digital age protesters who only protest one thing know anybody who's been killed by cops? Almost none of them. Almost none of them. That's why I call them digital age protesters. See, they protest what this digital age technology, what Facebook tells them to protest, what our press, which is literally trying to divide us simply for money. Black against white, civilians against police, Republicans against Democrats, Northerners against Southerners. It's just all about divisiveness. These digital age protesters, these kids, you know, who don't even know what they're protesting. And they only protest what they're told to protest, with no understanding of it whatsoever. That, you know, the Vietnam era protesters on both sides, the protesters and the counter-protesters, they knew what they were protesting. They understood it. They were affected by it personally. How many of these digital age protesters are affected by anything they're protesting? Almost none of them. And then there are all these other issues going on in this country. They're not protesting those, are they? They're not protesting those at all. You know, like, for example, this outsourcing of our economy, literally to communist China. They're not protesting that, are they? Not at all. By these corporations outsourcing American jobs to communist China, they're not protesting that. They're not protesting that at all, are they? No, they just protest what the press tells them to protest. But that monument in red, somebody had put it, Black Lives Matter. Now, what's so interesting about that is the ignorance there. What in the hell does a Confederate memorial, and this was a memorial just like this, what in the hell does a Confederate memorial have to do with Black Lives Matter? Nothing. But this, probably some kid, and for all I know, he could have been white. He didn't know that. He only knew what the press tells him. He only knew, you know, what Facebook, what people told him on Facebook, having no understanding. On a Confederate memorial, Black Lives Matter. Well, you know, that's not so offensive. Okay. You know, that's, you know, looking at that, I can see how, you know, well, yeah, black lives do matter. So do white lives. You know, I have a T-shirt. I had a T-shirt, and I have several of them say all lives matter. That means black lives matter, white lives matter. That means police lives matter, civilian lives matter. That means unborn lives matter, born lives matter. That means Confederate lives matter, Union lives matter. That means Christian lives matter. That means Muslim lives matter. All lives matter means all lives matter. Period. Nevertheless, putting Black Lives Matter on a Confederate memorial, yeah, that's desecration. Memorial. But this kid put that on there only because Nikki Haley had removed that Confederate battle flag. This hadn't started. But see, ever since these politicians began removing these flags, this has happened. And even, you know, Black Lives Matter, that's not necessarily so derogatory. You know, Black Lives Matter, well, sure, yeah, of course. Just as white lives matter, and yellow lives, and red lives for that matter, you know. But very soon, here, it was a different matter. Very soon, somebody spray painted up here after the the Escambia County Commission decided to, literally at the demands of this one woman, this one person, without even letting Escambia County residents even vote on it, at the demand of this one woman, this one person who said, I understand the flags are down, but I want to make it permanent. I don't want any chance of those flags ever going up again. At the demands of that one person, this one person brought the entire Escambia County Commission to its knees where it remains today. The first Confederate flag, which replaced the battle flag in 2000, was replaced with the state flag of Florida. Florida never even having been a nation. And Florida, of course, the state of Florida practicing slavery, just like all these other countries, before the Confederate States of America ever even existed. Okay. Immediately after that, not long after that, this monument on this side here, black, was spray painted. On this side here, Confederate lives don't matter. Right there. They've since removed it, of course. Somebody spray painted in black, Confederate lives matter. Now, of course, as it was written, it was Confed, period. Actually, no period, as I recall. Confed, but that's an abbreviation. Confed lives, and then don't. The D, instead of being turned like this, was turned like this. So it looked like Confed lives don't matter. But of course, it was obvious what it was meant to say. Confederate lives don't matter. You see, that's not the same thing as Black Lives Matter. No, this is derogatory. It's saying Confederate lives don't matter. And again, this could just as easily have been white kids as black. But you can be pretty sure it was kids. Certainly nobody who had ever gone through any segregation at all. That's what this does. And these politicians start censoring flags. Then criminals start taking that as a green light to do any damn thing they want. And they don't even understand it. Now, they removed the vandalism, spray paint on that. But let me tell you something. I knew when Nikki Haley removed that battle flag that politicians, almost exclusively Republican politicians, would start removing flags, Confederate flags of any variant, all over the South. And I was right. Not long after that, Republican governor of Alabama, Bob Riley, very conservative man, right? He removed his flags. He didn't ask the people of Alabama what they wanted. There is no other reason. It's to dodge the issue of gun regulation. Don't touch the issue of gun regulation. But we're going to go after something that has nothing to do with it. In other words, to avoid any discussion of our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, we're going to go after something that represents our First Amendment right to freedom of speech, a flag. And I knew that. And now all over the South, all these flags have been censored, removed. And I knew, as I saw these flags come down, this wouldn't stop. And then next, they would move on to Confederate memorials like this. And then eventually, they would move on to Confederate cemeteries and individual graves. And I was right. Because not long after that, right now as I speak, they've begun removing Lee Circle, a Confederate memorial in New Orleans. It's been there a long, long time. It's just a memorial, just like this. That's all it is. Just a memorial to the Confederate dead. Lee Circle. Now, this is the government doing this. This is the either the state of Louisiana, probably a city of New Orleans. But anyway, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised if the majority of these bastards were Republican. Not a bit. But nevertheless, no matter who it is, it's politicians. And it's the same thing. It's illegal now to destroy a Confederate memorial. See? Isn't that interesting? See, if that Confederate memorial in Lee Circle in New Orleans had been defaced, then it would have been a crime by a citizen. But then when the city government of New Orleans or the county or rather parish of I think it's Jefferson Parish in New Orleans, when the state of Louisiana government does it, then it's okay, right? And so now they're doing it. Lee Circle. I'm telling you something. Unless we start standing up against what has now become, see, I didn't call this cultural genocide until they started destroying, decided to destroy the local government, state or local government in Louisiana decided to destroy Confederate memorial. Now it's cultural genocide. Now it's cultural genocide. It's not just censorship now, it's cultural genocide. It's not just removing a flag which can be put back. It's destroying something that can never be rebuilt. A memorial. A memorial. And this will spread. After Lee Circle, a Confederate memorial in New Orleans is destroyed legally, by the government, the local, state, or local government. They will do the same in Mississippi, in Texas, in Alabama, in Mobile, my home city of Mobile. They'll do the same. They removed the flags in Mobile too. They even removed the Confederate flag from the city emblem of Mobile. They left the other flags up there. Isn't that ridiculous? City seal. It's crazy. They'll destroy this. Because that's how politicians operate. This is nothing but politics. And you see, there's one group of people in the world that I just absolutely hate, and that's politicians. And the majority of, the bottom line is this. I am prejudiced as can be of political leaders all over the world, at every level, at national levels, at state or provincial levels, whatever, territorial levels, at city levels. I am prejudiced as can be of, government leaders at every level of government all over the world, because most of them are just goddamned politicians. And see, politicians, they just care about themselves. That's all. See, Nikki Haley, she just cared about herself. She was just as self-serving as Dylann Roof was. She was no different, honest to God, than Dylann Roof in her mentality. No, she didn't kill anybody, but she abused her authority in such a way. What's the difference? To assault an entire culture. And these politicians, like Mayor Ashton Hayward, and like the Escambia County Commission, every single one of these people, that's all they are. I didn't even dislike Mayor Ashton Hayward until he pulled this stuff. I didn't dislike any Escambia County Commissioner until the Escambia County Commission pulled this stuff. Now I dislike them. You know why? Because as far as I was concerned, these were just leaders. But after they did this, now I knew they were just politicians. Just like the majority of political leaders all over the world, of every race, every ethnicity, both sexes, every nationality, every religion, every creed, they're all over the world. And they're no different. And see, this is how politicians operate. They see what they can get away with. They see what they can get away with their constituents. And they don't care. See, because politicians just use their constituents as pawns. They even claim to be representing them. You know, like, you know, Luman May, for example. He's as far as I know, he's the only black county commissioner of Escambia County. Now, he may say, oh, he's doing this, you know, for his people. No, he's not doing anything for anybody but himself. Just like the other politicians. He's no different from anybody else, you know, from the white members of the Escambia County Commission. There's no difference. He's just a politician. They're all politicians, and that's all they are. And see, they've met no resistance from Escambia County residents at all. None. Nobody has stood up against this. And that's why they'll destroy this. They will destroy. The Escambia County Commission will destroy this Confederate memorial unless the residents of Escambia County, of all races, all ethnicities, and both sexes, say, look, this isn't right. And start standing up against this. Start resisting this. We are just pawns. Politicians, we're just nothing but pawns to politicians. The constituents of politicians are nothing but pawns. The constituents of Nikki Haley were nothing but pawns. The constituents of Governor Bob Riley in Alabama, nothing but pawns. The constituents of Mayor Ashton Hayward, nothing but pawns. The constituents of every single commissioner on the Escambia County Commission are nothing but pawns. We're just nothing but pawns to politicians. That's how they operate. And they do everything they can, but in a totally self-serving way, claiming that they're doing it for a certain group of people when they really don't give a damn. And they do as much as they can. As much as they can get away with. And the more we let them get away with, the more they'll do. And that's why, you know, I swear to you, I mean it. Somebody vandalized this monument. Confederate lives don't matter. And that was a crime then. It was considered a crime. It was a, you know, if anybody has any information as to who did this, find them, you know. They're going to prosecute them, of course. It was a crime. It was a crime for a resident of Escambia County, or maybe it might have even been an outsider, might have been somebody from another part of the country even. I'm not telling you who did it. It might have been a tourist. And like I say, for all we know, it could have been just well been white kids. It was almost certainly kids though, not likely older people did this. But anyway, you see, that was illegal. Right? They removed it. I don't think they've ever found whoever did it. I don't think they ever really went to the trouble, but whether they did or not. But see, that's a crime. See, if I were to walk up walk up right here, I wouldn't do it, of course. But if I were to walk up right here and vandalize this, that would be a crime. I would be put in prison, okay? Or not prison. I'd be put in jail. I'd be prosecuted. As mentioned, when this monument was vandalized, the Confederate lives don't matter. You see, that was a crime. It was treated as a crime. Anybody finds out who did it, be put in jail. See, that wasn't a governor official. That wasn't a politician doing that. See, that was a crime then. But you see, when the Escambia County Commission decides not only it's not as simple as simply just spray painting something on this, but to demolish it, to demolish this memorial, which it will do unless we stop this. See, it won't be a crime because it will be political leaders deciding to destroy it. And I'll tell you something about Southerners. I mentioned earlier that I had a t-shirt that said all lives matter. And the interesting thing about this, I see all these, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives, and the reason I got that, of course, was, because I saw this Black Lives Matter, and of course, I was a little bit, concerned about that, because the idea, when you say Black Lives Matter, you're automatically insinuating, it doesn't matter how you put it, you're automatically insinuating no other lives matter, only Black Lives Matter. It's that kind of language. See, Black Lives Matter. Right after that, not long after that, I started seeing that, I saw this, Confederate lives don't matter. And then I started seeing this because, honest to God, because of the irresponsible behavior of the American press, which used to be the watchdog of the government, but now is just the instigator of the people, all for the sake of money, literally dividing us when we need to be united as American citizens. Open season on cops now, because of the irresponsible behavior of the press. Literally, police are being killed all over this country because the press, the American press, is giving the green light to people to do that. Let me tell you something, the majority of police officers are not brutal and hostile. The majority of police officers are not, there are some bad cops, but I tell you what, it's just like any other profession. Most cops are not bad. There are bad teachers. Most teachers aren't bad. I mean, there are a hell of a lot of bad lawyers, and there are certainly a lot of bad, political leaders, of course. There are bad doctors. Hell, there are bad construction workers. There are just bad people in any profession. And sure, there are bad cops. But the majority of cops aren't bad. And if you think that's not the case, just try doing it without them for a day. See how things go. The majority of crime, of black crime in this country, there is a lot of black on white crime. There is, of course, a lot of white on black crime, but the majority of black crime in this country is black on black crime. The majority of it. The majority of crime committed by Americans of African descent, black Americans, is committed against other black Americans. Police have to spend most of their time in black areas because of that, literally defending black, innocent black citizens from bad black citizens, criminals. Innocent black citizens of this country are being killed every day by black thugs. And the police have to spend most of their time in those areas. Now, what if the police were gone? These people would be getting murdered. Keep in mind something else. A lot of police officers are black. A lot. A lot. Nevertheless, it's open season on cops because of the irresponsible behavior of the press in taking every single isolated incident of alleged possible police misconduct and just showing it over and over and over again until we are literally convinced that all cops are bad and that they're all doing this. And that's just simply not the case because, see, this is how the press works. The press works this way. The press works on ratings. And the more we watch, the more we read, the more we listen to it, the more money it makes. That's how it makes its money. And ever since the incident in Ferguson, Missouri, in which reporters from all over the United States, all these news agencies literally went in and interviewed people who hadn't witnessed anything. And wrote down their statements as fact without verifying them. Literally inciting riots in Ferguson, Missouri. The press has been doing this. The press has been inserting the race card even into issues that have nothing to do with race. And it's all for money. The puppet masters who control the press in this country. Now, we have to have a free press. We can't have the government regulate our press because they don't want to be a free press. So it's kind of quite a dilemma, isn't it? And see, the thing is, we've got to start holding our press accountable. Because, the press has always been liberal, yeah, sure, but now it's just sensationalistic. Even Fox News is sensationalistic. It's all sensationalistic. Only the public media, the public media is the least sensationalistic. Why? Because it doesn't rely so much on commercials, advertising. And of course, the more it has to rely more and more on advertising because the federal government won't give it enough money. And so it's becoming even more commercial now. But you see, it's up to us. There is only one right in our Bill of Rights, and there are a lot of rights in our Bill of Rights, first 10 amendments to the Constitution, that is not in danger at all. Not at all. And that's the right to freedom of the press. You know why? Because that's the most abused. That's the only right in our Bill of Rights that's being abused every single day by the puppet masters who control the American press. And so the press is literally creating conditions simply to get our viewing that actually endanger our other rights in our Bill of Rights. Isn't that something? See, the press played a big part in this what's now become cultural genocide. The press played a big part in this. Broadcast this removal of the Confederate battle flag all over the country. Celebrating it. Isn't this wonderful? Because, it knew that so many people would be viewing it. So many people, isn't that wonderful? And other people would be just mad as hell. But it doesn't matter. See, it doesn't matter what you think. It just wants you to watch. It just wants you to read. It just wants you to listen. That's all it cares about. The press is as bad as the politicians are. It manipulates us too. In fact, in some ways, it's even worse. See, we have to start questioning our press, every single thing it tells us, and stop accepting everything it tells us as fact. We need to start holding our press accountable for giving us the truth, Not a bunch of lies, not half lies, not just one side, or half truths, not just one side, but all sides. But getting back to what I was saying, I've hardly seen anybody in Pensacola, Florida, with Black Lives Matter. In fact, I don't recall seeing anybody with that. See all these angry people all over outside of the South. Black Lives Matter, white and black. And Black Lives Matter, hardly seen any of that here. You know why? Because we're Southerners. You see, it's kind of interesting, but black Southerners have more in common with white Southerners than they do with black Northerners. White Southerners have more in common with black Southerners than they do with white Northerners. See, it's a regional thing. It's a Southern thing. And we're all in this together. This is why the South is known all over the world. The American South is known all over the world for its hospitality, for its kindness and good manners. In Southerners of all races, all ethnicities, and both sexes. It's amazing. An MSNBC reporter came down here yesterday to Pensacola Beach. He was going around MSNBC anchorman interviewing people about the presidential campaign, getting their opinions and all. He said he said this on WEAR, that's a local news station. He said this on WEAR at Pensacola Beach. He said he'd been all over this country in the last few days, he and his crew. I don't remember his name right offhand, but he said he'd been all over this country, he and his crew. And he said these people in Pensacola, these are the nicest people he's encountered. Why? Because they're Southern. We're Southern, that's why. It's talking about black people, white people, we're Southern. You know what's interesting? That shirt that I have, it says All Lives Matter. I was about to say earlier, when I saw that Police Lives Matter, then I thought, that's enough. This is ridiculous. Hell, all lives matter. All right, all lives matter. Yeah, all lives matter. Anyway, get back to that shirt that I have that says All Lives Matter. I've got nothing but compliments about that from black Pensacolians, from white Pensacolians. Nothing but compliments. Smiles. Not a single person has said anything negative about that at all. Isn't that something? See, it shows. See, the thing is, the American South is a unique region, and it really always has been. Always has been. Even when slavery was in practice here, it really was. It was just 10% of whites who even had slaves. They didn't have that much money, but New Englanders really hated them because they just thought that was disgusting because they associated so much with their slaves. And just, they considered them subordinates, but people. And this is why they wanted representation. This is why Southern slave owners wanted representation for their slaves in Congress. And Northeasterners wouldn't allow that. They didn't like that. Because they didn't just consider African Americans, as these slaves, to be subordinates. They considered them subhuman. They're not even people. That's how they felt about them. See, Southerners. I know one person in my life who I can honestly say is a racist. Now, racism is the most misapplied word in this country today. Racism is really used for just about anything. You know what racism really is? Racism is a belief that one race is morally superior to another. We're not even talking about anything physical or anything. We're talking about morally superior. In other words, one race is more godly, more holy than another. That's what really racism is. That's what really true racism is. Just disliking people of another race is not racism. Even making a joke of people again, or ridiculing people of another, that's not necessarily racism. You know what that is? Just prejudice. See, when I was growing up in the 70s, they used the word prejudice instead. Prejudice, see. And also bigotry. That's another way. Just simply hating me. It's bigotry, see. And so by that definition, I only know one person who's a racist, and he's black. I can honestly God say he's racist. He really believes that black people, he really believes that people of the Negroid race are superior to white people, people of the Caucasoid race. He really believes that, morally superior. And I found this out. Actually, I thought this was a friend of mine. He was in this poets group. Wrote a lot of poetry. Good poetry writer. But I noticed that there were members of this group, this poetry writers group. I write poetry too, black and white. We write poetry. But this one guy, all his poetry, it was more like rhetoric, and it was all just full of hate. It was all about killing cops and how it's right to kill cops, for the black people. He was talking about how it's right, all this stuff about basically just black supremacy, but especially killing cops and stuff, and all these white people applauding him. It's like they're out of their minds, because they didn't care what was right, they cared who was right. See, this guy has a lot of magnetism. He's able to fool a lot of people. He was able to fool me. See, I thought this man was just another one of us writers here in Pensacola, in this group, in this poets group, and that he just had some issues. And then one night, after he said that, he went on and on about the atrocities committed against the black people for 400 years. He didn't say anything about Native Americans, American Indians. What was done to them. And I was really surprised, because I went up to him and I said, I noticed that you said, talk about what was done to black people in this country in 400 years, and you're right, it was terrible. But I noticed you didn't mention anything about the Native Americans. And he told me, he said, oh, they've got their casinos, they got their reservations, they've been paid back. See, that was about this is. See, he was talking to us about how the black people should be paid back for what was done to this young black man who had never gone through segregation at all. This young black man who constantly, in his rhetoric, compares himself to a slave. He says, I'm a slave, and I'm a victim of discrimination. Showing total disrespect for his ancestors who really were honest to God slaves. And for his ancestors who really did go through honest to God segregation, discrimination, not only in the South but all over the United States. How dare he do that? How disrespectful that attitude is toward his elders who really went through that. How dare anybody compare themselves, compare their situation in this country today to the subjugation of the ancestors. Nevertheless, I was shocked when he said that. And I asked him, well, so-and-so, I've read that the Tao Te Ching says that every man is his own worst enemy. Every man is his own worst enemy. What do you think of that? He said, I said, do you sometimes get the feeling that you may be your own worst enemy? He said, no, man, America's my enemy. America's my enemy. And that led to a discussion, really pretty much an argument, in which he revealed not so much who he was, but what he was. You see, he was a part of a black supremacist group. There are black supremacist groups in this country, just like white supremacist groups. The New Black Panthers, the Nation of Islam, which of course really isn't Muslim. It's not Muslim because, see, the Nation of Islam doesn't consider Muhammad to have had anything to do with Islam. No, to be Muslim, you have to believe two things. You have to believe there is but one God and Muhammad is his messenger. They have this kind of crazy notion that, as this guy told me, that Muhammad, the Arabs stole Islam from the black Africans. So they're not true Muslim. You can't be Muslim if you think that Muhammad had nothing to do with Islam. Most black Muslims aren't Muslims. They give Islam a bad name. Malcolm X was assassinated for that reason. See, Malcolm X was a black Muslim, and he thought Islam was about, hatred and all this kind of stuff. We think of Malcolm X as a pretty bad guy, and he was. Arguably, he was racist. He argued that, he said that the whites were inferior to blacks because they didn't have as much melanin in their skin, right? He said that, actually. But not long before he was actually assassinated, he went to Saudi Arabia himself. He met real Muslims there in Saudi Arabia, these Arabs. And these real Muslims told him what Islam was truly about. Malcolm X returned to this country a changed man. He told his associates, these black supremacists, what he had discovered about Islam in Saudi Arabia. All these chairs set up for Malcolm X to speak. And to tell Americans that this black racism that he had supported was wrong. That any racism is wrong. But also, maybe even more importantly, to tell Americans what Islam was really about. That it really was, honest to God, just like Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, and all, basically a religion of peace. Goodwill toward one's fellow man. And he was assassinated before he could open his mouth, before he could tell Americans the truth. See, you know who assassinated him? His associates. His associates that he had spent all this time. In other words, these black supremacists that he had actually led. They killed him to keep him from telling Americans the truth. This guy, the only person I can honestly say is a true racist. He had come down here for this reason. And this is what he revealed to me. You know, you've been talking about Martin Luther King and all, about Martin Luther King. I told him, what about Martin Luther King? He said, what about Martin Luther King? He talked about, you know, Martin Luther King is just a fool, man. See, he told all these people in this poetry group about Martin Luther King and the values Martin Luther King expressed, and then he told me, you know, Martin Luther King was just a fool, man. He's an idiot. Martin Luther King told about this, he talked about how this Martin Luther King, his assistant, you know, was this faggot that went around. That's the word he used, this faggot that went around with Martin Luther King. Yeah, this faggot went around with Martin Luther King. See, the bottom line was, you know, Martin Luther King was just this idiot, peace lover, this wimp, this milquetoast who, you know, who was who was assisted by as Q. Well, that's actually, you know, I let it slip, but that's what he goes by. He just goes by the initial Q. Described as a faggot. He told me how, you know, I said, he talked about white on black crime. I said, yeah, that happened, but, you know, there's also black on white crime. He said, that's different. See, when it's black on white crime, that's payback for us, you know. I listened to all this stuff. And I said, look, Q, most black Pensacolians, most black people here wouldn't agree with you. And he said, yeah, that's why I came down here, yeah, that's why I'm down here. He said, to tell these black people here in Pensacola that they need to be paid back, huh? To tell them what they need. Yeah, that's what he told me. I had already invited him, not even knowing this about him. I had already invited him to come to the West Florida Literary Federation, of which I was a member and of which I'm still a member, not knowing this about him. Because, you know, I thought he was just another one of us, black and white, poets, who just had some issues. And I thought he would see these people in the West Florida Literary Federation, a writers group that was co-founded by Oral Wills. Now see, Oral Wills is a black Pensacolian, an American of African descent, who is old enough to have gone through the segregation. She's even written books about it, had them published. When black folks was colored, things like this, about the experiences of Pensacolians, black Pensacolians, in the civil rights era. Oral Wills is a co-founder of the West Florida Literary Federation in 1987. This is one of the kindest people I have ever known in my life. This black Southerner. This not only American of African descent, but this Southern American of African descent. Most of these other members, white, some Asian, you know, races. And I thought that by inviting him to this West Florida Literary Federation. He had this associate with him who had come from the same. Her name was Nadja. She's not here anymore, so it's kind of no longer. I think she moved on. But anyway, I thought by letting him see these people, they're not a bunch of racists, all this stuff. Letting him meet Oral Wills. It was mentioned. See, I had invited this Q, the West Florida Literary Federation, to see that these people, you know, bottom line was to see that not all white people were racist, you know. And especially you have him, you know, maybe even meet Oral Wills. This woman who really gone through segregation. I'll tell you something. You know what amazes me? Is these black people, these black Americans who went through segregation, not just in the South, but all over this country. You know what amazes me is how gracious these people are, especially here in the South. Most of these people who really went through the segregation, you know, who really had to use a colored restroom and a colored restaurant, couldn't go sit in this restaurant, couldn't sit, had to sit in the colored section of the bus, all this kind of stuff. You know what amazes me so much about these people? Is how kind they are. You see these young black people and they're so angry, you know. They never went through that. But you see these old black people, these elderly black men and women, Americans of African descent, especially Southern Americans of African descent. These people, you know, couldn't go into restaurants because these goddamn segregationist politicians who did a disservice, definitely did a disservice to the Confederate battle flag, that's for sure, because it never had anything to do with their agenda. They just took it on. But anyway, these people who really went through that, they told to go in these, they can't go in the restaurants. If they protested or anything like that, they had fire hoses turned on, dogs turned on. You know what amazes me? Is how forgiving these people are. How gracious these people are, how kind they are. It amazes me. It amazes me. You know, I think, you know why I think that is? I think it's because they realize that the segregationists didn't represent all Southerners and arguably didn't even represent most Southerners. They were just goddamn politicians, just like these. See, that's what amazes me. See, I think that's why. I think this is why these elderly black Americans, especially these elderly black Southerners who went through that discrimination at the hands of these politicians who are this Escambia County Commission, all these, politicians all over the South that are actually committing this, not only what began as just censorship, but now it's just outright cultural genocide against their Southern constituents, and no different. It's just all political, they don't give a damn. These same segregationist politicians, they didn't give a damn either. It was just for their political interests. And I think the bottom line is, these elderly black Americans, especially these elderly black Southerners, these elderly Southern Americans of African descent, they realize that. They realize these segregationists, they didn't represent the majority of white Southerners. It was just all politics. And they also realize that time has changed, and that even those with far more conservative opinions in the past, even those who did, just like even George Wallace. Now maybe, George Wallace, he was an outright avid, fervent segregationist, and then later on he ran for governor of Alabama again. That he no longer stood for that. I don't know. Was he putting us on? I don't know. But Maybe he was sincere. But one thing's for sure, I mean, politicians are not. I think that you know, especially with the Vietnam era and all that kind of stuff, you know, these elderly black Americans realize that Americans in general have changed. And even those with ideas of, you know, racial, you know, superiority among whites and all that, you know, they realize, you know, it's just like that. The song I was talking about in that last segment, I guess you could say, of this, Ebony and Ivory, you know, Paul McCartney and Stevie Wonder, you know, we all know the people are the same wherever you go. There's good and bad in everyone. And we learn to live. We learn to give each other. What we need to survive together alive. See, we're Americans, you know, and that's what matters. We're Americans, all of us, all races, all ethnicities, both sexes. And we're also people, human beings. And that's all that matters. That's why I don't even like to use terms like African American, because then you have to use the term European American. I mean, really the only, in my opinion, really the only people who really, you know, it makes any sense at all are Native Americans, because they just really just not exactly always been here, but for all practical purposes, yeah. Another reason too, we're dealing more and more with actual Indians in India, you know, with the globalizing economy, so it gets even more confusing. You talk about Indians, are you talking about India Indians or American Indians? That's another reason why Native Americans is actually more practical in that way. But getting at what I was saying, see, I had invited this Q to that. And obviously it hadn't worked. He was unchanged. My understanding is he said that his brother, I think, was killed by a police officer. Now, I don't know. You know, I can assume probably the police officer, it was necessary, but I don't know that. Maybe it was misconduct, but what difference does it really make? You know, anybody whose brother or relative is killed by a police officer, it's understandable why that person might become angry at the police. But that night, after I found out the truth about Q and his associate Naja, who's, you know, I don't really include her much anymore because she's moved along, and for all I know, maybe her views are different now. What he really stood for, and that he was actually sent here from Memphis, Tennessee. Apparently, he didn't mention the name of it, but apparently from a black supremacist group, possibly the New Black Panthers. I remember telling him, after all this argument back and forth, Q and his associate Naja got on his motorcycle together, rode off. I remember telling him, you have a gift for writing. You have a gift for writing poetry. You have a gift for writing. excellent writers, both of you, especially Q. I mean, he's an excellent writer. He's incredible. I said, you can use this gift to spread hatred, or you can use this gift to spread tolerance. You can use this gift for evil, or you could use this gift for good. The choice is yours. I continued going back to this poets group. It was called at that time New Poets Society. But I couldn't stand it any longer. See? I couldn't stand this guy, this Q, with this just hateful rhetoric, especially about killing cops and how that's justifiable. Just killing cops, payback, just nothing but violence and hatred. See, he led the group by now. He was the leader of the group. This young white guy who had started the group. He had moved on to go to school in Tallahassee, Florida State University, and he left it in charge of this Q guy. Maybe he didn't know the truth about this guy either. This racist. The only person I've ever known in my life who I can honestly say is just a racist. And this guy, this Q, spouting all this hateful, angry rhetoric, and all these people, not necessarily the majority, but so many of them white, some of them, and one in particular, I won't mention her name, who was actually the secretary of the West Florida Literary Federation, and she could not see this. She accepted this, clapped for it. She thought this was wonderful. Killing cops. Yeah, that was wonderful. Clap for, cheer for this guy. See, the difference was, man, I wonder if they did that on purpose. I don't know. That's over. Turn the fire on. I think that must just be timed or something. Yeah, spray sprinklers here. It must just be timed. I don't think it's. But see, it was different now, because whereas before I thought this Q was just another one of us, black and white, members of this New Poets Society, writers, poets, all good, who just had a few issues. See, now I knew the truth, that he was really just a hateful member of, a hate group, basically. Member of a hate group. And he was down here on a mission to spread hatred. Pensacola, using poetry of all things. Poetry? Using poetry to spread hatred? Oh my God. How perverse can it get? That using poetry to spread hatred, eh? So I couldn't go back again. See, that was in 2010. That group is still, it's not called the New Poets Society, but this Q is still a member of the West Florida Literary Federation. I told, the president of the West Florida Literary Federation, I told At that time, I told a close friend of mine in that group all about everything he had told me. They wouldn't listen. They just couldn't believe that this, charming person, one of the most two-faced, just cleverly, brilliantly two-faced people I've ever met in my life, could be that way. And I think, as far as I know, they still think that, this side that he shows, he's just wonderful, all accepting. Oh, he embraces Martin Luther King, when he really hated Martin Luther. He really hates Martin Luther King, nothing but contempt for him and everything Martin Luther King stood for. And as far as I know, he is still leading this group, this poetry writers group. So, what the hell? I can't go back, right? I can't stand it. See. But see, what got me onto that subject, of course, originally was the fact that I was telling this honest-to-God black supremacist guy that even black people wouldn't agree with what he's saying here. Most of the black people in Pensacola, you know why they wouldn't? You know why? More than anything, because they're Southerners. They're Southerners. You see a lot of angry black people up in Chicago. Almost all of them are young. Again, they never went through segregation. They have no reason to be angry. All these, angry black people. Angry white people, too, follow these angry black people. Up in Chicago, up in St. Louis. Even over in Los Angeles. In New York. You don't see too many of these really, really, really angry black people in the South. And why is that? Because they're Southerners. They're Southerners, see. See, they have the same hospitality the white Southerners have. Certainly not all white Southerners. I know some really, really, I hate to use the word, but I know some white trash. I really do some just honest to God white trash. I'm not talking just redneck, white trash. Just despicable bastards. I hate them. But the majority, white Southerners, no. And see, that's the thing. It's because they're Southern, see. See, the South is unique as a region. And this is really, when I was talking in the last segment about what was it wasn't actually a civil war, but what was the war between the Confederate States of America? What was basically war really between regions about? It was a regional conflict. These anti-Southerners. Southerners don't go into other parts of the country and tell them to destroy their, cultures and, take this down. You don't see Southerners going to, you don't see Southerners going to San Francisco, for example, and telling all these homosexuals and lesbians, oh, you got to take that rainbow flag down. You don't see Southerners, you don't see Southerners going to New York or Boston or whatever. You got to take, because I'm sure they have, Union memorials maybe. Oh, you got to take that down, right? You don't see them doing that, do you? See, the bottom line is we Southerners are special. We're Americans, but we're Southern Americans. And see, that's what, honest to God, this flag, first Confederate flag, and the Confederate battle flag, and the second Confederate flag, and the third Confederate flag represent for most of us. We're just proud Southerners. We're proud American Southerners. And we love the United States. And we're more patriotic down here in the South, all of us of all races, all ethnicities, both sexes, in the other region of the country. Sometimes it's just downright ridiculous how patriotic we are. And see, I think that's one reason these politicians in the South, these state and local politicians, are getting away with this. See, if they went to California, said you have to get rid of this or that, or the West Coast, or the Midwest, or the Northeast, any other part of the United States, see, they probably couldn't get away with it as easy because they know we're soft targets, aren't we? We're soft targets because we're hospitable here, very hospitable. You know, we're sometimes downright ridiculously polite. We have good manners. New Yorkers, I mean, you know, you can imagine, you know, New Yorkers, Boston people and that, you're tearing down anything that represents their culture, you know, they'd just be raising hell. People on the West Coast, they'd be raising hell. Anything that represents their culture. People in the Midwest, anything that represents their culture, they'd be raising hell. See, we're not raising hell because we're polite. But you see, we've got to understand, as Southerners, all of us, of all races, all ethnicities, and both sexes, that in this case, we've got to raise a little bit of hell. Now, I'm not talking about taking up arms. No, we don't have to do that. We don't need to do that. We just need to stand up against this. We need to stand up against it. Because if we don't, even here in Pensacola, after these politicians have destroyed Confederate Memorial in New Orleans, they will move on to Mississippi, Alabama, here in Pensacola. And sooner or later, the Escambia County Commission will have this Confederate memorial, and that is all it is, just a memorial to the dead, destroyed. And it'll be legal for them, see. So that's why we, right here in Pensacola, we need to tell them, look, you put that first Confederate flag back in this purely historical flags display, or you just take these 5 flags displays down. You know, what's the point in having these 5 flags displays if you just remove one of them? See? You remove one of these flags, you keep the other ones up. Or, there is something else we can do. Tell them directly. You can ask them to let us vote on it. See? Yeah, I noticed, looking at like video footage and photographs of the Confederate battle flag removal in South Carolina, not from the Capitol building, from a monument nearby, to which it had been moved in 2000 by Nikki Haley. That all these, amidst all these digital age protesters, had no idea what they were even protesting, no understanding of it. Hashtag take down the flag, and a few people, just a few, saying, you know, keep it up. one man standing in the background with a sign, let us vote on it. It said, let us vote on it. See, that's democracy, and Nikki Haley didn't listen to him, did he? Or did she, rather? Nikki Haley didn't listen to him. She didn't let the residents of, Nikki Haley could have replaced the Confederate battle flag with the first Confederate flag. I mean, she really could have done her job and just said, look, we'll deal with that later. Right now, I want to find out how this bastard got a hold of that handgun, and I want to make sure this doesn't happen again. And she didn't even touch that. Of course not. Republican, yeah. But she also could have let people of South Carolina vote on it. Governor Bob Riley of Alabama could have let Alabamians vote on it, see? Mayor Ashton Hayward could have let citizens of Pensacola vote on it. But even more significantly, the Escambia County Commission could have let residents of Escambia County vote on it. See, and then at least we'd know, right? We'd know. Let us vote on it. Let us vote on it. Let all residents of Escambia County, Florida, vote on it. All residents of Escambia County, of all races, all ethnicities, and both sexes, let us all vote on it. Let students, there are students here from other parts of the country and even from other countries here in Escambia County. They reside here in Escambia County. Let them vote too. They're still residents of Escambia County. Let them vote. They don't have to be U.S. citizens. They don't have to even be U.S. citizens to be residents of Escambia. Let them vote. You have some homeless people here. Hey, I think they can find a way to let some of these homeless people vote even. You can probably claim a residence somewhere. Let them vote. You have people down here. You have our military personnel down here, and military bases, but especially Pensacola Naval Air Station, a cradle of naval aviation in the United States. Cradle of naval aviation. This is Pensacola, Florida. Cradle of naval aviation. You have all of these military personnel, U.S. military personnel from the South and every other part of the United States. They reside in Escambia County. Let them vote too. Let all residents of Escambia County vote on it. How about that? That's even better. See, that's democracy. It's kind of ironic I mentioned the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers, they were a black supremacist group. They did a lot of good for the black community, but they were still a black supremacist group. The Black Panthers the same. But, their slogan was, they had their slogan, all power to the people, John Lennon wrote a song, borrowed from that slogan, power to the people, power to the people. And that's what this is, power to the people. Give the power to the people. Not Ashton Hayward, not this mayor, not the Escambia County commissioners. Not Luman May, not I think it's Grover Robinson, not my commissioner from my district, Doug Underhill, not any of these politicians. Let us vote. Let the Escambia County residents, let the people here vote. Give power to the people, all of us, of all races, all ethnicities, and both sexes. Let us all vote on it, and then at least we'll know. Just ask us a simple question. We don't even, you know, the Confederate battle flag's not even the issue here. See, I see people with a Confederate battle flag flying from their cars. Since then, I've seen a lot more people flag of the United States, actually. And, you know, I kind of question their motives, because it's like, you know, why they didn't fly the flag of the United States behind, so it's kind of like, are you just trying to rub it in or something? What is it, you know, with that? But anyway, I do see people with a Confederate battle flag flying in their cars. And, you know, since then, and yeah, you know, I give them a cheer, yeah, you know, because I know they're not being racist. They're just against censorship is what they're against. That's all. They're against government censorship, and now what's become cultural genocide. But, you know, the thing is, I didn't need to get a shirt with the Confederate battle flag on it, because the issue here in Pensacola is this flag. See, this flag is from there. And in my opinion, you know, it was a reasonable solution in 2000 to remove the battle flag and replace it with this. Made more sense. This was more representative of the Confederate States of America itself anyway. But you know what? As I say, most people in Pensacola don't even seem to even know what this is. Had one lady come up to me. She said, "Oh, I love your you know, I love that, your flag there." I said, "Yeah, it's the first Confederate flag." She said, oh. She thought it was a flag of the United States flag. That's how similar it was. But see, let the Escambia County residents vote on it. And see, that's the idea. See, I'd like you to ask, if you will. I would appreciate it. You know, even if you feel that it should stay like it is, hey, fine. I mean, you're welcome to vote on it too. But let the residents of the Escambia County vote on this. And ask your county commissioner for your district. You can even mention it to Mayor Ashton Hayward, whom I've never met, and I really hope I never have the displeasure of meeting. Ask your representative, the Escambia County Commission, to let us vote on it. You can ask your county commissioner for your district, whichever it is. Or any of the county commissioners. You know, let us vote on it. Let you decide. You know, let us decide. Let the residents of Escambia County, not even permanent, all residents, permanent or not. You know, right? Let us decide. Let us vote on it. Either return this flag, the first Confederate flag, back to the 5 flags displays. That's what I'd like most. Or leave the display as it is, knowing that Florida was never even a nation, and that the state of Florida and these other nations in these 5 flag display all, you know, practice slavery, not to mention did some major damage to Native Americans as well. Before the Confederate States of America ever even existed. Keep it like it is, right? Even though it's insulting to our intelligence. I'm sorry, I really shouldn't insult my opinion, but you know, see, it's like I say, it's really insulting to our intelligence the way it is. That's just how I feel. All of us, I mean, black and white, all of us here in Pensacola, Escambia County. It's insulting to our intelligence the way it is now. Or just do away with these 5 flag displays. You know, but I'll tell you something, frankly, Ever since this happened, I wish the Five Flags displays had never been erected. I wish the Fiesta Five Flags had never been started. Because of this nonsense. What the hell is this? See, Mobile did the same thing right after Pensacola did. With a Six Flags display. Now it just says 5. It's the same thing. Politicians. You let the people in Mobile decide. See, you know, this is really hard on me. This is really, really hard on me because not only am I a Southern American, not only am I actually a descendant of Confederate veterans, not only do I have a lot of knowledge about the war between the Confederate States of America and the United States of America that most Americans don't have, but could obtain if you really wanted to learn. Right? And not only because you know, I almost, half my life at least, even my grandma Mayo, who was an Ohioan, and I have to admit, at times she was a little arrogant about being a Northerner. She'd married my grandpa Mayo, had gone up to Akron, Ohio, and that's where he met her. He looked for work, and that's where he met her. And she kind of had a little bit of a Yankee complex. He's kind of just a little bit of, just arrogance about, of North this and this and this, and the South's backward and all this kind of stuff. She was a wonderful grandmother, but, everybody has their faults. But, even she never complained about the Confederate flag and these 5 flags. She thought the 5 flags, this was great. Fiesta 5 flag. She'd invite us to go down to the Fiesta 5 flag, go to Fiesta 5 flags. She never had any problem with that 5 flag display, even with a battle flag in it. She never complained about that. She was from Ohio. Why didn't Diane Crummell bring this up a long time ago? The Escambia County Democratic Women's Club. Why didn't she bring it up a long time ago? She's purely political. Let me mention one more thing. Here's another reason why this is happening, and why it happened from the very beginning. Mayor Ashton Hayward removed the first Confederate flag the day before the Supreme Court decision, which literally forced a redefinition of marriage on the entire United States. I was among the Floridians. See, this has never been about so much against same-sex marriage. Although I don't approve of same-sex marriage. I'm not just, antagonistically against it, but I don't really approve of it. But I'm not just This is an issue of states' rights with me. It's not an issue of morality. See, that's an issue of states' rights. And see, the thing is, from the very beginning, it's not really about gay rights. It's really about redefining marriage. See, that's my opinion. In the state of Florida, we didn't, we and the majority of voters, we had referendums just like they had in the states. I, along with most other Floridians, we didn't vote to ban same-sex marriage or prevent same-sex marriage. There was no, no, this was how the vote was. It was a referendum. It said the state of Florida defines marriage as a union between one man and one woman. Agree or disagree. See? That's all it was. In other words, we voted We didn't vote against same-sex marriage. We voted to keep the traditional definition of marriage, which has been in existence since marriage has ever been. It is not, a union between members of opposite sexes. This was even falsely compared when a federal judge came into Florida and then struck down the vote that we had made. That we're not going to redefine marriage here in this state. He compared it to the case, 1967 case, Loving versus the state of Virginia. You know what that case was about? Interracial marriage. And this was the state of Virginia had placed a ban on interracial marriage. And a black woman and a white man want to marry. The state of Virginia said they couldn't do it. The Supreme Court ruled that that was unlawful, unconstitutional, that you couldn't ban marriage between a man and a woman of different races. See, here's the catch, see, this guy comes in here, this federal judge, I forget his name, who came down here. See, after these states decided we're not going to redefine, marriage. We're not going to redefine marriage. These judges, these federal judges, I've never seen in my life such encroachment on federal states' rights in my life as I've seen in this. All these federal judges came down. This is a Democratic Party right here. You're talking about Republicans. This was a Democratic Party to do it. All these federal judges came in, started striking these down. Oh no, you can't. You have to. In other words, it's not so much you have to, allow same-sex marriage. You have to redefine marriage. You have to accept a redefinition of marriage. And you know what this guy, this judge who came down here, Florida, and he struck down the vote that we had decided on. Most of us residents of Florida, Floridians. He compared it to the 1967 interracial case. What's wrong with that picture? What's wrong with this picture is this. Loving versus Virginia, which by the way, I agree with that Supreme Court decision. I don't feel that any state has a right to ban interracial marriage between a man and a woman, but that was just it. The federal government, it's the rule. See, it was a man and a woman. It's not the same thing. That's still within the traditional definition of marriage. It was marriage between a man and a woman of different races. That's all. That's not the same thing as a man marrying a man or a woman marrying a man. So that's a ridiculous comparison to make. You see, the thing is, it was really shocking to me because all this stuff was happening right then. And then the next day I found out the Supreme Court. I couldn't believe the Supreme. I'll tell you something. There were some states, actually, who voted, where the residents voted, they would redefine marriage. And, I didn't exactly agree with them, but I wasn't going, I have to say, I think it was Virginia and Maine, I think both did. They agreed that, we're going to allow this redefinition of marriage and allow for same-sex marriage. If the residents of those states voted for it, that's their choice. And, I may be wrong, but I think I would have felt a little bit uncomfortable if after those people had voted for that, even though I didn't exactly agree with that, if the federal government would have come down and said, oh no, you can't do that. And see, that's what this is about, states' rights. But see, when the U.S. Supreme Court forced this redefinition of marriage on this entire country, that got a lot of people angry, and especially here in the conservative South. I understand the South is very conservative. These politicians knew that. See, Mayor Ashton Hayward probably almost certainly knew that. He knew that, the next day, he knew the next day the Supreme Court was going to make a decision one way or the other, and he knew that would capture our attention, however it went. See, that would distract us. he and these others. The Escambia County Commission knew we were off that. I'm going to tell you a little story here. Escambia County residents were so pissed off about that and so focused on that. And I mentioned that the letter to the editor that I read in my last segment that I originally sent in June to be published, wasn't published till July 27. I called the editor, I forget his name, of the editorial department of the Pensacola News-Journal after like 3 weeks or so. See, I don't subscribe to the newspaper. Yeah, I can't read the newspaper regularly. It makes me too angry. Yeah, of course. News makes me angry, of course, understandable. But I called and asked him, because I'd been looking and checking ever since. When I went to the store, and I hadn't seen it. And I'd seen all these letters to the editor about the Supreme Court decision, almost no letters to the editor, very few about this. It was at that time just, local, state and local government censorship and stuff, especially in Pensacola. And I asked the editor, the editorial department head, Pensacola News-Journal, about that, if he had received it, was word. And he said he'd take a look at it. And he said, yes, I've got it here. He told me that he had gotten so many letters. He said, I have just been swamped with letters about the Supreme Court decision, opposing the Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriage. So many that, I hardly have any room for anything else. He says, as soon as this kind of clears up, maybe we'll have more room. But he got it in there for me. But these politicians, these politicians all over the South, they banked on that. They counted on it. These largely Republican, not all, but mostly Republican politicians, even Nikki Haley, that crossed her mind. Probably did. See, this is how the Republican Party. This is the most Republican part of this country. This is how the Republican Party pays back its southern base. And by the way, voting for Donald Trump isn't going to help, because Donald Trump doesn't give a damn. He doesn't care. I'm just telling you that. And he will start a nuclear war, or provoke one, if he's president of the United States. So, that was another thing. And see, that Supreme Court decision, I don't agree with it. Again, like I say, it's not really a matter of morality. I don't have, and let me tell you, I'm not telling you, this is something else. I'm not telling you to go and bother people because they get married, members of the same sex and all. Leave them alone. That doesn't do any good. That doesn't accomplish anything. And I think generally, for the most part, people do. But this isn't an issue of morality with me. This is an issue of states' rights here. This is an issue of federal encroachment on states' rights. That's how it is. Let me make that very clear. I'm not against, though I am opposed to, though I'm opposed to same-sex marriage, I'm not just vehemently against it, angry. Anyway, it's an issue of states' rights. It's a political issue. It's not a moral issue. But, nevertheless, that Supreme Court decision can be overturned anytime in the future. It can be overturned with a Supreme Court decision itself by the court, or with even an amendment to the Constitution by Congress. That can be overturned. I will say this. Let me say this just really quick. Though I don't agree with that decision, that's not killing anybody. Roe versus Wade is killing people. Over 50 million human beings have been killed in the womb since Roe versus Wade was passed. I believe it was in 1972. See, no matter what you think, abortion as a means of birth control, no, that's no good. Abortion as a means of birth control is no good. You know why? Because life doesn't begin at birth. Life begins at conception. That's just a fact. I do believe there are some cases in which abortion is necessary, but most abortions in this country, I guarantee you, they're not necessary at all. No, it's just murder. And Roe versus Wade has enabled that. So I will say this, you know, I'd say let's work on overturning Roe versus Wade first, because that's what's killing people. That's even more serious. That's killing people. The same-sex marriage ain't killing people. Roe versus Wade is killing people every day. See, unborn lives matter just as born lives matter, do, right? Yeah, that's right. But anyway, at any rate, the Supreme Court decision can be overturned. And even these flags, they can be replaced. But let me tell you something. Once these memorials are destroyed, they can't be built back. These memorials were built generations ago. They can't be built back. And I swear to God, you know, they will move on. These same politicians, even here, even in Escambia County, Florida, after they've destroyed these monuments, these Confederate memorials, they will move on, and they will destroy Confederate cemeteries. And they will destroy individual graves of Confederate soldiers. And for what? What will have been accomplished? See, we've got to act now. And the least we can do is demand, not ask, but demand that the Escambia County Commission let us vote on it. And, you know, more broadly, those of you who are seeing this from all over the South, same thing. Why don't you ask your state and local politicians to let you vote on it? Then it can be settled. And then at least you know you made the decision. And even if you don't agree with it, at least you know the people have spoken. Power to the people. Power to the people. This is what democracy is about. Democracy.